Greetings, all you fearfully wonderful. This is Jom speaking. Today I shall be going over a little of my thoughts around Little Nightmares 3 and its supermassive unfolding of the story. Thoughts that blossomed from our tour of the repugnant candy factory, its odious workers, the ever-meticulous boss lady, and how similar certain aspects of it felt to the Maw, once ruled by the lady. The more I pondered, the more I saw in fact many references reflecting on the previous games' antagonists, as well as some on the protagonists, and I posit that parallels help clarify consistent patterns throughout the games concerning this world called Nowhere, and how it functions. Shall we begin with the candy factory? To me, the most intriguing detail about the supervisor is her missing lower limbs, besides of course the excess of upper limbs. It's so splendidly animated how she propels herself from room to room, and we're shown how functional and versatile her various appendages are, scribbling and filing and control paneling, a sense of fastidiousness. Now, it is my belief that this realm of contradiction, the Nowhere, which is the setting for the story, can manifest objects of desire, specifically through a force the SON protagonist, Ruth, calls the Sea of Eyes. In the candy factory, it would appear as if the supervisor's desire for operational effectiveness was so great she was gifted a feature that would help in that regard. But if this is so, then where are her legs? Why not have her be complete? And can we glean anything about her character from this detail? Secondly, we do have to call out how, not that she's doing a bad job, it's just the factory is not up to snuff with the literal mountains of waste, the miserable looking workers, and oh goodness, the fathomless health and safety violations. A lot is being said here about the meaninglessness of her supervision. It's almost like this facet of the Nowhere, the theme of Candy Factory, is about management more than it is about pragmatic management. Our cute little monsters scamper about the place, and she appears to get increasingly frustrated at the havoc in their wake. She does have these numerous auto-tracking camera systems, but once again, from a pragmatic and even game mechanic perspective, they simply amount to meh. The kids eventually disable most of these, and this leads us to this massive moment, this epiphany. I believe that in this moment she determined that if she was going to catch these little vermin, she needed to make peace with who she was, embracing her disability, giving up the pretense. Not as an arthropod, ladies and gentlemen, but the arthropolis.
Psych.
Now this apparent belief of hers is what is most venturesome to me. Could she have viewed her rolling prosthetics as more burdensome than useful? Would this mean their purpose was more rolling aesthetics? To appear more complete? There seems to be a familiar emphasis on image here. To add to that dose of tragedy, we also find a room of spare rolling prosthetics, which perhaps implies a dissatisfaction or an insistence with the facade. At the very least, I feel this surely parallels the broken mirrors found in the locked-up musty room within the ladies' quarters. A major theme of that similarly dissatisfied antagonist was beauty. If my hunch is correct, this would be a fascinating step towards a better understanding of the Nowhere's functionality. And I appreciate SON's and LN3's more direct and clarifying approach to the world building by compounding on the following character comparisons. Not that theories and ideas on these themes didn't abound before, but I still think the repeated patterns help give soft confirmation to what directions to take. So what are these speculative takes I'm taking? Well, it seems clearer to me that the Sea of Eyes operates by fragmenting its victims' sense of self, or more specifically, whatever parts of them bring stability, self-order, or self-love even. It's not just the pride of these antagonists, but the psychology of their pride that's being explored through visual metaphor. What makes them tick? What is the nature of whatever bad habits or devolving spirals they persist in?
Duality, a notion essential to psychology. We all contain a multitude of personas and change proverbial masks to match our present situations. The body is the container for this legion within, allowing us to maintain the important illusion of a singular self, the very basis of human experience.
A peak concept for me was the body as a container. What does he mean by the body? How is it distinct from the mind as a container? The eyes seem to want to observe and study and answer my questions themselves. By fragmenting these children, in this case quite literally, they create numerous creatures and visages of imbalance. This of course presumes the supervisor was once a child victim distorted by the eyes. She might also be a facet of the realm of the Nowhere. In any case, these realms of Nowhere are the way they are in terms of their material constitution, specifically in order to worsen these imbalances between a victim's persona.
In Noon, there lies both the innocent child and the disturbed traveler. Both fight for control. But what happens when the duality is not only in the mind?
2 breaths. Why could I hear him breathing? Why could I feel them breathing? My body was...
The man in the purple suit, or as I like to call him, the purple puppeteer.
The purple puppeteer.
Yes, the purple puppeteer. Is he Ruth? Is he Ruth's body? Was he a victim? Or just simply one of these material manifestations? A created being? Whatever he is a unique case.
So when he goes for the toilet, who wipes, him? Or does he make the puppet do it?
While it does seem that the purple puppeteer is his puppet's purple butler, could it be that this particular fragmentation of self explores not an internal, but an externalization of self? That the purple puppeteer willingly surrenders himself to what he treasures most? It reflects on the tough balancing act of the artist, where on the one hand the ego is arguably the core of artistic expression, but on the other hand exalting the ego can feel shameful and vain.
The man beside me grew shy, both loving the praise and regretting the attention.
Notice also the puppet's missing legs. I wondered if it was a coincidence, but a major theme for the antagonists in this game was leglessness. What could they mean by this? Could it also represent incompleteness? Perhaps a shame and anxiety towards how others perceive them? That would make sense for the supervisor. Notice how she attempts to have some form of glory through portraiture, or even advertisement. However, she doesn't quite... She falls short of that glory, let's just say. Or is being legless calling out dependency? For although the purple puppeteer proverbially gives legs to his creation, it is still a creation, a dummy. Perhaps symbolized here by the puppet's incessant neediness, like bro, you just woke up 10 seconds ago. Outside of him, who would ultimately care for his art? Is he content to simply have it exist, art for art's own sake? Or is there a side of his ego who couldn't possibly bear to view it that way? What use is expression without audience, this side of him screams. But the only way to further solidify his art's existence, to keep the magic and illusion alive, would be through this praise and adoration, through people. That's why I say his case may be an externalization of his ego. In the carnival's backstage, as opposed to the mall, he surprisingly does not seem to hunt children. However, the children are not seen as partner or co-participants to the extravaganzas, but merely as outlets.
Suddenly, the crowd burst into a cheer as Rusty reached the middle of the rope. But the dummy's face crinkled, full of hate, wanting those cheers for himself.
And by far one of the most common consequences of these imbalances of psyche, that also shines some more light on some prevalent themes from the previous installments, at least in my opinion, is the revolting return of cannibalism. Would you allow me to call it expendabilism?
One sat down in the seat to my left, eating a candy apple. It stank horribly, and the center was mushy and raw.
Raw, you say? That realms are sustained by feeding on themselves makes a relentlessly explicit return, and I do have to commend Supermassive Games, who are generally famous for their spectacle, for attempting restraint on the imagery. Recall that alongside the supervisor's portrait are some esteemed employees of the month. I found it such an adorable, endearing detail, worthy of some more reflection. You may see one or two on foot, but most of the factory workers are curiously enough suspended by these contraptions. Technology isn't here to replace us, but to assist us. Wow, thanks technology. Anyways, once again you have this strange insistence on lack of legs. These employees of the month vaguely resemble the relationship between the lady and the twin chefs of the mall. They have it pretty good, honestly. Living quarters, water, electricity, good working benefits, provided they attend to the guests. But recall also that one of the bigger theories surrounding LN1 and the staff of the mall was these horrific masks. It was speculated that the mall forced masks in order to accentuate the lady's beauty. Could it be a similar case with the supervisor? That it hurts her pride to have those more capable than her? If so, I think these links compound on each other to once again highlight my theory over the external self. someone who finds meaning through and despite another self. This expendabilism fuels the encouragement of the false ideas and perceptions of the rulers of the nowhere that themselves may fuel the existence of those realms. This would retroactively make sense as to why the Sea of Eyes would supplement the lady with the ability of draining life or spirit from the living. At least I assume so due to the eye motif briefly shown during Six's acquisition of said power.
In the spotlight, some glow, while others shrivel into shadows. We glow and do as told, or... He didn't finish the thought, but I understood. The times I was on TV, I'd have done anything to avoid all those lights.
So, hopefully this discourse of mine is giving keen enthusiasts of the Little Nightmares franchise ideas and what I think are exciting new lenses to consider the story thus far. Not just of the antagonist, but even protagonist story arcs. For now though, let us end with the final level. It seems a crumbling recreation of the county's psychiatric institute. Apparently Otto, a chief counselor there, has been ocean deep in his research on breaching the nowhere. His arms snake into every nook and cranny of the facility, implying conspiracy within the waking world, or perhaps great influence from questionable sources. Perhaps some like-minded parapsychologists have joined his child experimentations since last we left him. Lo, allow me to call him Louis for now, seems to be in isolation, fearful even of whoever keeps checking his door and hiding his toys, perhaps in fear of confiscation. It's such a disgusting but predictable departure from the counselor's kind attitude early on.
Why did you take me here, Otto?
I know solitude can be hard, and visualization is essential to developing belief.
Visualization, I began this essay pondering how the eyes operate on their victims, but it would seem that we could also learn to benefit on the counselor's textbook. Louis' map and visualization seemed absurd, but his belief in it actually worked. Even Ruth, prior to Dr. Otto's sinking madness, did actually appear to be improving even within her supernatural ailments.
It had been ages since I'd visited a shopping centre. I didn't know where to start.
You saw no need to find an exit right away?
I felt like I was in good hands.
A key detail within Chapter 3 was the reintroduction of mirrors.
Let your imagination run, but don't be afraid to interact with the dream. This is an important step in our process, the dialogue. Bring together the divided parts of yourself.
The mirror.
Pardon?
The one off your shelf. If I meant to speak to myself, well...
Nowadays, unfortunately, it seems the Institute has taken these positive steps to step specifically opposite. This bleak sensory deprivation room, I assume, may have some positive application in psychiatry, but pair that with this what I assume is a potty bucket, meaning he's in there for long stretches of time, I feel certain that this is for torture. They're trying to lead to dissociation. Breaking the children in this way would be peculiarly similar to how I've argued the eyes operate. It would mean, ironically, that Otto has become the Institute's version of the eyes. Perhaps this was the Candleman's trick when he said to him,
"A quarter will be granted. The toll sent in torment, not yet made."
The eyes being on Otto's hand could also symbolize some blind groping along dark walls, reaching and searching under the delusion that the nowhere has tangible passage for him. Though he has eyes of his own, he doesn't see.
Sink into these tideless waters.
The Candleman might not have been lying. This sinking is the quarter. Otto is heading nowhere. Reflecting on blind delusion then, the mirrors start to make more sense. The body represents this dialogue. The container is some rational component of us that recontextualizes or puts things into perspective, that tells us to make peace with who we are. Masks would then represent the lies, the false comforts that aid in the moment but ultimately tuck away and compartmentalize trauma and fear. Masks are obscurity, mirrors objectivity. However, this is where it gets fascinatingly suspicious. If you already disliked LN3's ending, well, you might not like this. Louis' character arc is that he beats the nowhere through what seems to me yet another instance of an external false self, just like the Purple Puppeteer's purple false self. If you hadn't picked up on the pun yet, Louis is alone. Thank you. But in what way is she the part of his mind, the persona that hopes for company, or the one that caves into itself, that accepts the illusion of self-company? You see, I believe alone is a manifestation of the eyes, or is at least facilitated by them. The paradox that lies in the game's ending is that although Louis seems to be changing for the better, the symbolism and reality don't quite check out. Remember, Louis' dream, the map, his hope and positive visualization is not simply to find home, but to find home with her. And so even though he's found the mirror, even with the mask off and face revealed, the reflection is still telling him that she's there, that Louis is not alone. That's the paradox. Sure, it makes symbolic sense that the mirror scares her away. Notice that she remains masked. The real confronts the fake. But then in the realistic sense, he has changed for the better, right? If alone was his hope, or at least a big part of his hope, then what exactly is the issue, realistically speaking? Why give the boy the power of mirror travel, if that even is how powers work in the nowhere? Why did the eyes manifest the girl, if it simply repaired him and didn't lead to fragmentation?
The body is the container for this legion within. What happens when the duality is not only in the mind?
If this whole game is showing us that these manifestations actually just encourage worsening disorders and spirals, unless of course that's the point, that this is what the eyes wanted. Within the presumed sensory deprivation room, they have supplied him with a storage box of some kind for his crayon, paper, and prison toys. Ladies and gentlemen, is this doll the trap? Once he passes this final mirror, this final trial, does he swallow the hard truth? Will he make peace and let go, or will he spiral into loneliness? The dingy, seemingly devoid of life surroundings that I assume to be his home might be a twisted little hint towards us that Louis' worst little nightmare is that there is nowhere to return to.